This is my third and final food journal, and I'm answering 5 out of the 6 questions from the assignment. The first question is, what does authentic mean to you, and has your definition changed? And before coming to Italy and taking this class, I thought authentic food meant making something in the exact traditional way. I figured if you changed the recipe and used different ingredients, then it wasn't really authentic anymore. But after this semester, my opinion has changed on that. One thing we talked about a lot was how food is always changing. Recipes spread through migration, trade, tourism, so they're naturally going to adapt over time. But I've learned that doesn't make it less authentic. It just means it's evolving. But General Tso's chicken is a really good example of this because it isn't traditional Chinese food, but it tells a story of Chinese immigrants like adapting to life in America, and it's authentic to that experience. But living in Florence also changed the way I think about authenticity. I realize it's less about following one exact recipe and more about the people making the food and the culture behind it and the history it represents. But food changes just like cultures do, and I don't think that takes away from the authenticity. I think understanding the story behind a dish is a lot more important than whether every ingredient is exactly the same as it was 100 years ago or whatever it is. For question 2, think about a moment this semester when food represents something bigger than just a sustenance. One experience that really stands out to me is just going with my roommates to Ristorante to Murillo, I believe is how you pronounce it. But we had pear ravioli that everybody had been telling us we needed to try, along with some good wine there. But the food was amazing, but honestly, that's not what made the dinner so memorable. It's just one of those nights where you just really enjoy each other's company and you're just laughing, and it really hit me like how close we've gotten over the past 5 weeks because coming here I didn't know them. But looking back, I don't remember the dinner because of the ravioli. It's more so just being together, and like looking back at like all the memories we've made. But before taking this class, I would have just said it was one of my favorite restaurants, but now I realize that food can represent a lot more than just something we eat. I don't immediately think of the pear ravioli, even though it was really good, but I think about like just being here in Florence, studying abroad, and the friendships that we made here. Living in Florence just showed me that food is something that like brings people together rather than just eating it to enjoy it. And that's some of my favorite memories of me just like going out to meals with my friends. So for question 3, where in Florence did food feel like it was being performed for visitors? One thing I noticed pretty quickly in Florence was that some restaurants seemed to be like really focused on like standing outside and like attracting tourists rather than serving locals. There were employees standing outside trying to convince people to come in and just like stopping people as they walked by, and had like menus outside with like different languages on it and pictures on it, and writing authentic Tuscan cuisine, and that seemed very performed. But after learning about food tourism in this class, I started realizing that authenticity can sometimes become something more that's like marketed instead of something that's naturally experienced, if that makes sense. Not implying that those restaurants have bad food, but it definitely made the experience a lot less genuine to be like begging people to come inside. But definitely my favorite meals in Florence were the ones that we like found naturally, and places that felt way more relaxed and weren't trying so hard to like force people to come in the restaurant. And then for question 5, who gets to decide what counts as authentic food? And I don't think one person gets to decide on what's authentic. I think it's influenced by like a lot of different people, including chefs, family, like local families, tourists, social media, whatever it is. In Florence, though, I do think that chefs and local families have the strongest voice because they're the ones who've grown up with these traditions and continue passing them down through each generation. But American food culture feels very different. In the United States, people mix cuisines all the time and create new dishes all the time without worrying too much about whether or not they're traditional. It's kind of a free-for-all compared to Italy. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other, though. I mean, there's one I prefer, which is American, but I don't think it's better. They just all reflect different cultures, and Italy puts a lot of value on preserving those food traditions, while American food culture is more so focused on like creativity and adapting food to different people's tastes. And then for question 6, what's one thing that I'll take away from this course? The biggest thing I take away from this course is I don't really think of food the same way anymore. Like before this class, I mostly cared about whether it tasted good or not, but now I find myself like wondering like where it came from, how it's spread here, and why people prepare it the way they do, like the specifics of how each meal came to be. But experiences like Dita Artiganali, doing the olive oil tastings, going to the market, just like eating my way through Florence just like changed my perspective on it. Just changed my perspective because I actually got to experience what we were learning rather just reading about it. But I also think I'll travel differently now. Instead of just looking for like the highest rated restaurant or the best meal to get, I'll be definitely more interested on like learning the story behind it and learning about who made it, stuff like that. That's probably the biggest thing that's changed for me while being in this course, but I think it's something I'll think about for a while beyond my study abroad experience. So that's it. Thank you.